Hello, I'm delighted to speak to you today about genetic genealogy of Northeastern Mexico. But before I get started in my presentation, I want to take a moment to thank all the people that have helped me with this. I've been working with, well, now over 1,000 people to generate this sort of information. And I definitely want to thank Susana Guerra for helping me with this presentation and recording it. Without her and people like her that are always giving their time, not much would get done. Okay, so 30 years ago, I started genealogy. And early on, I found there were people that really admired the book I created for myself of my ancestry, just a software program. And other people wanted me to do that for them. And so as long as they were related to me, I'd have them send me the details of their ancestry, and I'd take all their research and put it into book form, and they were delighted. And then about 20 years ago, when genetic genealogy got started, I got excited about it myself, and it really sort of worked well with what I was doing before, which was helping other people with their research and bringing it all together for the region. And that's where what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, now the lab I use for genetic genealogy testing is family tree DNA. Now they have 3 tests. Back in the day they didn't. The newest one is autosomal DNA. They call their product Family Finder. An earlier one was the paternal line one, the Y-DNA test. And then there's the maternal mtDNA for mitochondrial DNA. We'll start off with the first test I took, which was this mitochondrial DNA test. And this chart shows what you're learning about. When you do your DNA test, you received your mitochondrial DNA from your mother, who got it from her mother, who got it from her mother. And if you look, here we have 6 generations. And going back at the 6th generation, we have 32 ancestors. This test is only going to tell you about one of them. So in a sense, it sort of doesn't tell you a whole lot. And so that was another reason I thought, gee, I'm going to add some value to this test. So where people pay this outrageous amount of money, they can find out a lot more than just their own test results. And we're going to be talking about that today. Now, what do they promise on the page or sell you on when you sign up for this test? It says, explore your heritage on your maternal side. Well, we just reviewed there how it's not your maternal side, it's your mother's 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 mother's, which is not all of your mother's side, it just whatever. And it says connect with your maternal line relatives. Well, good luck with that. I had a friend that took her test and she had no matches whatsoever. And she's since passed away. And when I look at what I've seen from other people, there are a lot of people that when they test have no matches. And even when they do have matches, their matches aren't very closely related to them, so it doesn't tell them a thing. They don't really actually find relatives. So it's follow your migration path. Well, that's a gross exaggeration, okay? We'll review exactly what they mean by that. It's nothing recent. This is all Stone Age stuff or pre-Stone Age stuff. And the final one is receive your personalized mitochondrial DNA full sequence video. We were going to show that, but on a couple of run-throughs, it kept hanging up within our Zoom presentation. So we're going to give you the link for that, and you can do that at some other time, and you'll get a feeling for how it's sort of personalized, but not a whole lot. Now, you send in your results, and 2 months later, you get this. Well, you go to the site to download it or print it. And so here it is. It's got my name. It's got my haplogroup, CK, followed by number 88, and my sample number. By the way, the sample that you turn in is good for any other tests you take later. So if you want to upgrade, even after you just send the sample, you just go to the website, put in your sample number and your password, and your credit card and you get some more. So here's your results and you go, gee, this is my heritage and my migration route. You know, maybe you were expecting a Spanish land grant, but that's not what you're getting here. You're getting a bunch of numbers, and somehow or another, in reality, they are your heritage. And they do speak, in some sense, to your Stone Age migration route. It doesn't get me here to California, but, you know, it does promise something, and it does deliver. You just have to, I want you to know ahead of time so that I don't hear a common complaint, which is I've got my test and I don't know anything more than I knew before, and that is common. Okay, so if you get your mtDNA test, you're going to fall into a haplogroup, which are these letters. So A, B, C, D, which by the way are Native American ones. I was a K, so I'm over here in the K bunch, and it's 25,000 years ago. So I split off from the other letters, or my mother's mother's mother did, about 125,000 generations ago. Okay. Now we want to see actually how it sort of breaks out these letters. If you look at the top here, haplogroup K, you have to have these mutations just to be in K, okay? And then we want 2, so we have to add K2, a couple of more mutations. And then K2A, we add another 3 mutations. And then K2A8, the final 2 mutations. So that is my heritage, a bunch of mutations. Wow. Did you expect that when you took your test? I don't know. Okay, and when you go online, you're going to have a whole bunch of other choices. We're not going to cover a whole lot of that because we're covering not just this test, but 2 other tests and also our research. And we just don't have the time. But I want you to sort of get a feeling for other things. So here are the shortcomings for this test, right? It tells you very little about your ancestries as a whole. There are very few matches, if any, and not likely to help you find relatives. So big disappointment? Well, sort of, but hey, think about this. You're going to pay for a test and get to be able to trace your ancestries back 1 million generations. And when you get your test, so you're going back to Eve, right? And when you get your test, you can sort of be able to compare your tracing to everyone else that's ever taken a test. So when somebody takes a test and they're a C or a B, you might be able to do some math and get a general sense of how many hundreds of thousands of generations ago you split off from them, or your mitochondria did anyhow. I didn't mention that mitochondria is a short little strand of DNA that's found in every cell in your body in these things called organelles, mitochondria, and mutates very slowly, and it takes the sugars from your cells and turns them into electrons. So they're essentially electric power plants that are just keep you going. And your DNA happens to be there for that test. Now, on the Y-DNA test, which I've also taken, it follows your father's father's father. And again, it's not going to cover your paternal line so much in that it only covers your father's father's father, not your mother's father, and so on and so on. So every generation, you know a little less, and you got it right. Your heritage here is again going to be a bunch of mutations. And yes, you can go all the way back to Adam, as in Adam and Eve. So you take the other test for Eve and you take this one for Adam, and you got it all covered. Now, if you're going to take this test, you can come in at different levels. The cheapest one now, I think, is the Y37, which is 37 short tandem repeat markers. And then you can go up to 111 or do the big Y that not only includes short tandem repeats, but also includes a whole bunch of SNPs, which, but I always recommend, if you're going to take the test at all, to take the 37, and then at any time you can just pay additional money and get an upgrade on the testing. So here are the same exaggerated, well, not the same exaggerated claims, in that because it's your father's line, it's only good for males, so females can't even take this test. But there's this talk about a heritage and the migration path, and it also claims that you can trace your surname to its roots and build your family tree. No, it's not going to do that. I don't think so, really. Okay, so here's my test results when I turned mine in. It's a 67 marker test. So there's all these little numbers there. And if I could find another Rendon to compare them to, it would be awesome. Actually, it was several years before I found another Rendon to match to. So that was nice. But otherwise, I had a friend of mine, my cousin, test so that I could check my mother's line, the Sanchez line. Went back, got the results over 3,000 matches, of which almost very few were even Hispanic. And he has 3 Sanchez matches. So, hey, that's a good one. There are people that have taken this test and have no matches also. So if you get your results, these are going to be your options. You're going to be in these haplogroups. Now the haplogroup A here has no relationship to the haplogroup A in the mitochondria. They're just letters that were assigned a long time ago. And so no comparison between the two. We're looking at a whole different part of the chromosome. These are chromosomes rather than the DNA strand in the mitochondria. And we're only looking at parts of that Y DNA chromosome, and that it's gigantic. But this is enough to break all the populations into subgroups. When we look at the people from northeastern Mexico, this is again Coahuila, Nuevo León, and Tamaulipas, where our research focuses on. I looked at the results of people there by looking at my family finder matches. And we see that the most common group is RM269 with 414 people that tested with that result. That also is the most popular, most common Y-DNA group in Europe. So it's not too crazy to realize that that's what's happening here in the New World. Further down, you see the Q ones, and those are Native American ones. So here we are with the shortcomings again. Only males can take it. Tells you very little about your ancestors as a whole. You have very few matches, if any, and not likely to help you find relatives. I should go back and say a little more about this stuff about why taking the test. I'm telling you why not. One of the reasons you take the test and then share them is so that other people can look at your results. And anytime you have other people look at your results, and you have peer review. And that's a big part of the project we're doing, more than just testing. We're having our results, we share them amongst the whole group. So for instance, when I did my results and found that I had K2A8, I checked for other people with those results and was doing a tree for someone there. And I was following her line back, you know, generation after generation after generation. I'm going, oh my gosh, she went past 10 generations, 11, 12, 13, 14. At 18 generations, we came to Maria Inés Rodriguez. And I thought, wow, all those generations back. And so, of course, I published that for other people to see, that, saying, hey, this person who is an ancestor to most of us from the region, this is her mitochondrial DNA results. And I got an email from a respected researcher in Monterey who said, gee, you know, my line goes back to that woman and those aren't my results. And I said, ooh. I said, well, please send me your tree. And she said, right. And so she sent it along, and I'm checking, you know, from her to her. Every generation I'm looking for those records that show that trace the roots back. And I'm getting back to 8 generations and it's still looking valid. I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. At generation 9, there was a marriage of her sixth grandmother, and on the marriage, you know, if you just did the extractions, it shows her parents. But if you look at the actual record, it states that she was actually abandoned in the home of those parents. So those weren't her biological parents. If they had been, we do know from the research we've done that yes, it would have been Kay, but instead it wasn't. So that was fascinating, and there are zillion other stories on that. Maybe we can cover those later. So we established a project within Family Tree DNA. It allows you to make these DNA projects. Most of them are surname projects. And so the surname projects are typically what? They're for males, for Y-DNA things. But we wanted to have a regional one so that people within the region could see other people's results. Because otherwise, when you do your test and get, like I did, K whatever, it just shows me my matches at the K whatever level. And you get your Y-DNA again, you're just seeing your matches for that. You can have a whole lot of other people with the very same surname, but that have different results, and you don't know that they even had results or even tested. So by having a project, you can see other people who are saying, hey, my roots are there, and here are my ancestors, here are my results. So currently you can see we have over 1,300 members, and if your roots are there, well, consider joining if you've taken either or both of these tests. Later, we'll go on to this side. This side is where we've done some additional reports because the project one doesn't actually let you do that there. It allows you to have your kit number, a little bit of information, not even contact information, reality, and your results, but it doesn't do anything like we're able to do off-site. Now, the best test, I think, the one that really gives you your money's worth and is the cheapest, the one I can recommend to everybody, is the autosomal DNA one. It looks at all your chromosomes. It helps you find cousins, and it'll tell you something about the mixture of all of your recent ancestors. So we go from looking at matches in the Stone Age to matches in the last 500 years. And so really nice. So here's what they claim or are selling you on. It says you get a refined view of your ancestry and a percentage of your breakdown of origins. And hopefully we'll be able to show you how my percentages work out. I really want to do that. Connect with your autosomal DNA relatives for 5 generations for sure. And then it also has remote. So we'll go a lot further than that too. Learn if you have any connections to ancient European groups. They've done a whole lot of research on the groups in Europe versus other parts of the world. And so that's why they put that little plug in. And of course, most of the people that are from Northeastern Mexico also have European roots. And so I'm sure they'll find that fascinating. And compare your matching DNA blocks, which is a sort of fun thing to do. Once you go on and log on, you can go to your family finder results. And I don't know if you can see here, but up in the left, it shows that at this point, and I've just logged on another 50 or so matches this morning, I have 6,793 matches. And it's sorted here by the closest relative. And I blotted out and redacted the names of people to protect their identity. But here's my mom at the top, and they could correctly identify her as mother, which is nice. And my first cousin, Jesse, there he is. And oh, notice this little blue thing, tree-looking thing to the left of or right of Jesse. That tells you that the person has a tree online that you can click on. Now, some of these trees are rather disappointing. It might just be the person's name or the person and his parents. And then because they're still alive, it says private and you don't even know who their parents are. But other times they're great trees. It always pays to contact these people. Sometimes when you talk to them, you find out it's a fantasy tree or what they hoped or they're adopted. And anyhow, you want to always get a hold of the person to confirm that how confident they feel about their tree. Now, I was talking about distant relatives. Early on, I emailed, by the way, all my matches. Just like this morning, I sent an email out to another 40-something people who my recent matches. And early on, I found that I'd get emails back from people that would say, gee, I have no roots in Mexico, because I would mention that in my email, that my roots are from Northeastern Mexico. And people would go, there's no way, I have no roots in Mexico. And by the way, I'm Jewish. Go, oh, well, that's interesting. And so I would look, and typically they would have, a lot of them would have a little amount of DNA here on chromosome 10. This is Kerry. He's one of the people that this morning emailed me to say, gee, I've got a new match, Luis Guerra, and he matches me right there. Do you match him? Of course, I pulled it up, and sure enough, he's one of the people in our Guerra Zoom DNA project, which is sort of fascinating. And so he matches me on what I consider my Jewish DNA route here. By the way, the other people up here, the reason I matched them more is everyone here on this particular group are from Northeastern Mexico. The only one that is that doesn't have any Northeastern Mexico out of the 80-something matches that I have, which are mostly Jewish, is Kerry down here at the bottom. So I thought I'd share that. Yeah, sometimes, I mean, this has to be a link back over 500 years when the Jews were expelled out of Spain and were either forced to convert, which would have been my ancestor, or Kerry's ancestor who said, forget it, I'm going to Poland. Okay, now just so you get a picture of what you're getting into, you get your results and they're good forever. So remember your password and your kit number so you can keep coming back and checking year after year. Here, I took my my family finder test in 2012. I had a little under 200 matches. The next year almost doubled. And here I am so many years later, and I've got a lot more, and they'll keep going on until after I'm dead, which is something I should mention. That happens, you know, if you want to contact somebody here, a lot of the people that test are like myself, they're older, and a lot of the people that are matching, the reason that they're not going to respond to your email is they're no longer alive. And so putting off thinking about contacting them, well, is a risky business. Okay, another thing I did is, and you don't get this on the site, I had to download the data, which you can do, and then I used the database to add things up. And so here, I thought it would be interesting so you could see on my particular situation how I have one match for mother, one match for first cousin, and on. And of course, most of my matches are fifth cousin and remote. But because I email all of these people and have trees for over 1,000 of them, I know that a whole lot of them are actually in the fifth cousins to remote. So don't just think that if they're fifth cousins, you won't be able to connect with them on your tree. Okay, now we're going to see about, a new share probably. And now we go on to our, gee whiz. This is why we practice this stuff, all right? Okay, so I want to show you the website we were talking about earlier, where we've taken our research and really pumped it up to give you more than just genetic genealogy test results. So this is the site. We'll be sure to give you a link in the chat thing if you don't know about it. First of all, at the top of the site, you'll have to scroll through a whole lot of it, are all these books that I put together. I was explaining how I did research for so many people, and through the years, I'd have to come back and look at the same records over and over again. So about a decade ago, I started creating books on all the marriages First of all, I have all books on all the marriages of colonial Nuevo Leon, and I also have for colonial Saltillo and colonial Villa Grande. Great books. They're free to download. If you have ancestors there, put them on, download them onto a thumb drive. They're great. Now, I wanted to get right to the genetic DNA reports. In particular, we'll go to this one here called the mtDNA report for 2018. So several years ago, actually for years, I would create a summary of what we were learning as we tested our communal mitochondrial DNA tests. And the last annual test report I created was in a couple of years ago. Actually, now we're getting on 3 or 4. And at the time, I shut it down because we found so much that the pickings were going to get a little slimmer to create a whole new report. On this one, the green lines were the new results we got for that year. But at the top of our list is Maria Inés Rodriguez. And what I'm showing you here is, of course, her spouse, so that people could get a feeling on who were we talking about, because how many Maria Inés Rodriguez's are there? And how many descendants I had at the time, that number has grown to over 170,000 now, and her haplogroup, and how many generations back she would be. And the second person in rank is Isabel Olea. That was a great one. I was doing a book for Jose Lopez, and I'm following that line, his mother's line, and I landed on her, and I contacted him and said, gee, I've got to have results for that. Can I send you a kit? And he said, sure, go ahead. And then we get it back, and if you notice, she's in haplogroup C1, C2, which is Native American, which I love that because, I'd never seen any record to indicate she was Native American. And what we were finding as you scroll through all these results, and as we looked at results in general as a group, is that most of the people from Mexico have mitochondrial DNA that's Native American. Now, that shouldn't be too much of a surprise. The Native Americans were here, for 10,000 years before the European mitochondrial came over. And when the Spaniards came over, they were mostly males. And a male's mitochondria that he brought with him died with him. He couldn't pass it on. So it was only women that were brought over that brought their European mitochondria with them, like Maria Inés's. And you see the third one there is Beatriz Quintanilla. So those 3 women I think of as the ancestors to pretty well everyone from the region. I'm so delighted to be able to share that with you. And so you can go on and scroll through all these women and you go, wow, I went through there, and that year I already have test results for 15 of my ancestors, which is probably a world's record. I mean, who else has been able to do this kind of research? So, hey, people that don't do this, they're probably smiling and go, what a nerd. But hey, I'm proud of myself. This was an awesome accomplishment. Okay, now, then we created, as we saw earlier on this side, we have individual reports for all of those women in that cart and more, and we'll add some as we get them, as results come in. But for Maria Inés, because she's the biggest one, and you'll see that report has 933 pages. I cut it off so it would be bigger, okay? And first of all, these are just the men and women that have that mitochondrial test. We obviously couldn't include her, all of her ancestors, because that report would be thousands of pages long. But so this is an awesome report here on generation 2, by the way. You can see that what we're looking at is we show the mother and her children, and we'll include males here, like Martin here, because he has her mitochondria, right? But his line doesn't have a little cross here because we won't show his children. The only time we'll show children of a male in this report is if that male is also married to a woman that has the same mitochondrial DNA, in which case it reflects her mitochondrial DNA. So all the people in this report are either spouses, which are always on the right, and they're always going to be males, right? Because we won't show females in this report that don't have this mitochondrial DNA. And if we went down, to page 700, one thing you'll see is the names will be stacked up. So you'll see one of your ancestors by, and then her mother and her mother and her mother and her mother and her mother, going all the way back to Maria Inés Rodriguez, okay? Then we did something similar for the males. And, oh, by the way, I've got to thank David Reda for these. Before, the only way I could create a report like this was to not include, for the mitochondrial ones, not include any males at all, so you wouldn't even know who the spouses were. And you wouldn't know about the males that have that mitochondria, in that it was a limitation on trying to filter out the correct people for the report. And David Reda asked me one day if there was anything he could do to help. And I told him, and he found a workaround with another piece of software, and he created filters, sent it to me. And so these reports were, and the way they work is thanks to his volunteer work on that. As you know, he's the manager of the We Are Cousins DNA projects, and he's a fabulous resource. So on this particular Y-DNA report, which is for Marcos Alonso Garza Algon, and as you might know, that line covers a bunch of surnames, right? In that name changed surnames. Part of the family had different surnames as it moved along. There was the Trevino, the Garza, help me out here, the Montemayor, and the Falcons. They all descend from this person. Now, I shouldn't say they all. Sometimes people think that simply because they have a certain surname, that their DNA came from that surname. But if you don't have either the DNA test results or an actual tree, there are a whole lot of people with these surnames that are the result mostly of non-parental events that have the same surname but don't go back to the person that they might think they do. Okay. Now let's actually go on to my website, my result page, okay? I want to show you a bunch of stuff here. We were talking about your migration route on mitochondrial DNA. So remember, mine's K, and I'm clicking on here and waiting for it to go. And so because mine is K, it shows me a map of this. This is what they promised. Hey, we're going to show you your migration route. So notice how it doesn't get me here to California or to Texas or to Mexico. I'm still stuck in like the boot of Italy or something, but this is, Stone Age time. And it only shows me that one, but I can look at others because now I know about a bunch of other ancestors. Like, let's say we were talking about Isabel Olea. Well, we'll click on C, and how did she get here? Oh my goodness, she had a heck of a route. No boat for her, so she had to come all the way across here. And as you know, the European or Native American ones, oops, it bleeped out, ended up here when this was land for about 5,000 years. And then they arrived in Mexico about 10,000 years ago. And so that's a neat one. Oh, I want to show you the T one too. Had a lot of fun doing some T1s. And they have a sort of connection to Jewish DNA. And so one of my ancestors, an ancestor to a whole lot of people, has their little root coming from Eve and over here in the Middle East, and where everybody took a left and so forth. So then we'll go back to our trunks so that we can do a similar thing for our Y-DNA. Y-DNA and matches map. Oh, migration map. And waiting. And remember, I'm E. So, hey, here I am. Here's Adam. And, oh gosh, A zillion years later, there I am. I'm still not, I didn't even make it to Spain. Forget about making it over here. So my ancestors would have been here probably with Hannibal taking those wild elephants across the waterways here. How did they float them over? They probably made them swim, huh? And then march them over here to get revenge on the Romans. Or maybe it was during the period where the Moors ruled most of the Iberian Peninsula down here at the half. And again, you know, we can sit there and say, hey, how about that one of the other groups? And so the most popular one, of course, is going to be R. So we click on R. There we go. Oh, but then we have to have our Native American one because they've got a long way to hike. And so here they are. Our Native American Q was coming along with my Native American C, probably a little love triangle thing coming down here with the A's and all the others, and they ended up over here. So that's what you pay your fees for, tracing them back all that way. I love it. Okay, now we'll get back and notice my enthusiasm here. That's genuine, okay? And now we're going to go to my origins, which is, now we're going to cover something more within the, like I said, since the Stone Age. And so where are my roots from? Well, the way they display it now, and through the years they changed this. Look at it now, 5 years from now, it'll look totally different. So here it's trying to say on the left that my 77% of my roots are from Europe and 14 are from the Americas, and then some odds and ends down here at the bottom. Now, if I click on an individual one, which is the highest one for me, it's 44%, it's Basque. And then they give you all this literature so you can learn all about the Basque if you didn't know anything about them, and they're up here. And it's not too uncommon that it's been known that a bunch of them came to North Mexico because of the mining for gold and silver, right? Then you can click on the next one and it's the Italian Peninsula. Now, I don't know of it being related to Juan Baptista Chapa, but if I was, this would be highlighted. The Romans probably brought this DNA over here. And so that's maybe where that came from. You have to come up with a narrative on your own when you get these things. All of Europe was marching back and forth since the Stone Age. And so to find that I have a population of ancestors over here in Hungary is not that crazy. Or that's 5%. Central Europe, that's the Visigoths probably, right? The Romans, they were actually Romans after they invaded Italy. And so that could be them. The Celts, because of the sea wearers there. And let's see, here's my Ashkenazi Jewish DNA. I know this is wrong, you know it's Sephardic, but some of the Sephardic Jews ended up going up to Poland area. And actually my friend Carrie, who emailed me, I was telling you about, my Jewish friend, he has an oral history of, even though his results say he is Ashkenazi, that some of his Jewish ancestors came from Spain and were actually Sephardic. And then we get to 14% of my Native American, my biggest chunk of Native American is not up here where I expected it, up in Monterey, but down here in central Mexico. And so I had to think this through and come up with a narrative, you know, and that is that we know that the largest population in all of Mexico is in this region because this is where agriculture can work. The people up in these northern areas were hunter-gatherers, and so the populations were much smaller. So if you have roots in Mexico, you might find too that a lot of your ancestry comes from central Mexico and not necessarily from Monterey. And then, wow, well, this is less than 1%, but here we have this thing going on here and go, oh, how did this happen? Well, probably, you know, the Spaniards landed first here, Columbus out here by the Dominican. Anyhow, the Spanish were out here quite a bit of time before they even came to Mexico. And so perhaps that's where that DNA little segment came from. And then here we are in northern Mexico. Not surprised at all about, only surprised that it's so little, less than 1% for me. And then Mesopotamia, gee whiz, this is the Phoenicians. They were the earliest people to come to Spain, right? We'll stick with that story. And let's see. And of course, my Sephardic Jews, which were also right there with the Phoenicians very early on in Spain. Later, St. James is sent over here to Santiago de Compostela. He was sent here to convert his fellow Jews into Christianity. So, hey, some of those might even go back that far. Who knows? And do we have any more? Oh, can't miss that. These are remember my Y chromosome? Well, these are my Moorish ancestries. And then this perhaps is some slave trade in that the Portuguese brought slaves mostly from over in the Congo area, but because they went to also to India, would sometimes pick up slaves over in Ethiopia. So perhaps that's what's going on there. So there we go. I wanted to show you all of that. And now, gee whiz, now what are we going to talk about? We'll go back to the home route. Oh, here we go. That kills a bunch of time. And we're going, here we are. So on all of these things, like other testing sites, you can download your raw data and take it to a secondary site. For the autosomal one, you go like to GEDmatch. You're only going to match other people that tested here or one of the other sites that are willing to transfer their data over there or are capable of it, because it's not completely simple, especially for as we get older, we go, oh my gosh, what's this all mean? But you can do that. The Y chromosome one also had a site where you can go and compare Y DNA with people from other locations. And the MT one did too, didn't it? Well, so goodness, now what are we going to talk about? Oh, all the other fun stuff here. We were talking about separating your tree out to where you could see how you branched off. That's where some of these other tons of information down here under the Learning Center. Any of the stuff I said, well, they've got it right over there versus what I had to say, right? So really encourage you to take the time and enjoy what you've essentially paid for, and to definitely contact people. But mostly, if you're from this region, consider sharing your information. I know for a lot of people that's a challenging thing. They don't necessarily want to. When I first got into genealogy, it was a learning thing to have people say, send me everything you have, but they wouldn't send anything back. And it was because people at times felt like they'd worked very hard, and they didn't see why they would want to give away something that they worked so hard to put together. And I've taken the attitude that, gee, if I worked that hard on it, I don't want it to go to the landfill without it being put to use, okay? So my idea is to get the information out to people so that I feel that I get a sense of reward when other people are able to learn about their ancestry based on what we put together. I'm getting a message from dear Susanna that it says 2 minutes. In reality, I blathered on. I probably forgot to say a bunch of stuff about other things, but we are going to have a section afterwards where you can ask questions, and I'll probably remember to mention something I forgot. So thank you so much for being here today, and I hope to hear from many of you that are from this area and would like some help. Okay, goodbye.